Working as a night security guard isn't glamorous. People think it's just about sitting in a booth, drinking coffee, and waiting for sunrise. But the truth is, nights are long, quiet, and heavy with things you can't explain. I learned that the hard way during my shift at an office building in downtown Ohio. The building itself wasn't special. 8 floors, glass walls, modern conference rooms, and long fluorescent-lit hallways. During the day, it buzzed with employees, phones ringing, and printers spitting out paper. But at night, it was another world, dark, hollow, and unsettlingly quiet. I started my Friday night shift like any other. I clocked in at 11 p.m., checked the surveillance monitors, and noted in my logbook, all clear. My routine was simple: patrol the floors once every hour, make sure the doors were locked, and keep an eye on the cameras. By 1:30 a.m., the building was silent except for the humming of the air vents. I grabbed my flashlight, clipped my radio to my belt, and started the patrol. The lobby was empty. The elevators sat still, their numbers glowing faintly above the doors. The first 2 floors were fine, quiet, clean, nothing out of place. But as soon as I reached the 3rd floor, something felt wrong. The air felt colder, and the fluorescent light at the end of the hallway was flickering. I frowned. I had walked past that light earlier and it was steady. Still, buildings are old, wiring goes bad. I told myself it was nothing. I walked down the corridor, the sound of my boots echoing. Halfway down, I passed one of the glass conference rooms. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone sitting at the head of the table. I froze. It looked like a man, shoulders straight, head slightly tilted down, as if staring at something on the table. My chest tightened. Nobody was supposed to be here. All employees had left hours ago. I flicked on the overhead light. The chair was empty. I stepped inside, scanning the room. The polished table reflected the light, the chairs were neatly tucked in, and nothing seemed out of place. My heart was still pounding as I whispered to myself, "Just your imagination, don't lose it." I shut off the light and left, but unease followed me back to the booth. When I sat down, I pulled up the CCTV feed for the 3rd floor. I rewound the footage to the moment I passed the conference room. My mouth went dry. The camera clearly showed a dark silhouette seated at the head of the table. It wasn't a blur or a shadow, it looked like a real person. Worse, just before vanishing, the figure's head turned toward the camera. I pushed my chair back, nearly knocking over my coffee. "No way," I muttered. Maybe it was a glitch. Cameras distort things all the time. I tried to convince myself it was just bad footage. Then, at 2:15 a.m., it happened. Every single fire alarm in the building went off at once. The shrill noise made my ears ring. I scrambled to the monitors. The cameras lit up with chaos. Emergency lights flashing, alarms blaring, but no smoke, no fire, no people. On camera 4, something caught my eye. The 3rd floor hallway door was opening and slamming shut over and over again. I reached for my radio, but my hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. My training told me to stay put in the booth. Never investigate alone during alarms unless there was visible danger. So I locked the booth door, sat down, and tried to breathe. 3 minutes later, the alarm stopped. Silence returned. The building was calm again, like nothing had happened. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I turned back to the monitors. First, everything looked normal. Then I noticed the 3rd floor conference room camera. The chair at the head of the table was moving. Slowly. Turned, creaking, as if someone invisible was swiveling it toward the lens. I froze in my seat, staring at the screen. Then the feed flickered. For less than a second, I saw the figure again, sitting in the chair, facing the camera. Only this time, its face was pale, hollow, with empty black eyes. And then it was gone. I didn't patrol the 3rd floor again that night. I stayed in the booth until the morning guard arrived. When he came in at 7 a.m., cheerful with his coffee, he asked how the night went. I hesitated before answering. Finally, I just said, "Quiet." That was the last shift I worked in that building. I filed for a transfer the next day. And to this day, whenever I walk past a conference room at night, I avoid looking inside. Because I know what I saw wasn't my imagination. It was waiting. Most people don't realize how strange a parking garage feels at night. During the day, it's just a place full of cars, noise, and people rushing in and out. But after midnight, when the concrete levels are empty and the overhead lights buzz faintly, The whole place feels like a giant echoing tomb. I worked as a night security guard in a downtown Chicago parking garage. 5 levels, low yellow lighting, and cameras that only half worked. My booth was at the entrance on the ground floor, with a wide view of the entrance ramp. That night, my shift started as usual. I logged the incoming cars, checked the gate, and went on my hourly patrols. The place was quiet, except for the occasional car pulling in after a late shift. By 2 a.m., I was back in the booth sipping stale coffee, trying to stay awake. That's when it happened. A black sedan rolled down the ramp slowly and stopped near the middle of the second level. I noted the time in my logbook, 2:06 a.m. At first, I thought it was just another late arrival. But after 2 minutes passed, nobody got out. The car just sat there. Engine off. Headlights still glowing faintly. I leaned forward in my booth, squinting through the glass. It was too far to see clearly, but I could make out 2 figures in the front seats. They weren't moving. They weren't even adjusting or talking or checking their phones. They just sat there, staring straight ahead. I picked up my radio. Control, I've got a vehicle parked on level 2. Occupants are not exiting. Over. Static answered me. The radio crackled, then went silent. I set it down, frowning. The signal in that garage was always bad. I figured I'd give it a few more minutes before going up there myself. 5 minutes passed. Still no movement. My skin started crawling. Something about how still they were didn't feel right. Then, without warning, the car's headlights blinked on and off 3 times in perfect rhythm. My mouth went dry. That wasn't random. It was deliberate. And as if that wasn't enough, within seconds, every single car alarm in the garage started blaring at once. I nearly dropped my coffee. The sound bounced through the concrete structure, making it impossible to tell where it was coming from. I stared at the monitors, flipping through camera feeds. On the second-level feed, the black sedan was still there. But the alarms were going off on every single floor. I hunkered down inside the booth, heart pounding. Protocol said not to approach suspicious vehicles, especially if occupants were inside. But my instincts told me something far stranger was happening. After about 30 seconds, the alarms all stopped. The silence was so sudden it made my ears ring. I looked back at the monitor. The black sedan was gone. Not driving away. Not rolling past the booth. Just gone. I replayed the feed 3 times. The car was there 1 second. 2 figures in the front seats, still as statues, and then in the blink of an eye, the camera glitched and the spot was empty. I sat frozen for nearly 10 minutes, waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. The next morning, when the day guard came to relieve me, I told him what I'd seen. He listened calmly, sipping his coffee like it was just another Tuesday. When I finished, he smirked and said, "Oh, you saw them?" My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, them?" He shrugged. "That same car shows up once a month. Always after 2 a.m. They sit there for a while, alarms go off, then they disappear. Been like that for years. You'll get used to it." I didn't get used to it. In fact, I requested a transfer after my second encounter. But sometimes, when I park in a garage late at night, I catch myself checking the rows of cars, looking for that black sedan. Because deep down, I know it's still out there, waiting. Hospitals are unsettling enough during the day, but at night, they feel like a different world. The sterile smell of bleach, the dim lights, the silence broken only by the beeping of machines. It all builds an atmosphere that never lets you relax. I worked the night shift at an old hospital in Pennsylvania, and my assignment was the basement level. That was where the storage rooms were kept. Extra beds, old wheelchairs, medical files, and also a morgue that hadn't been used in years. Most guards hated the basement patrols, but it was my job. It was a little past midnight when my shift began. The first round was always easy. The basement was quiet, the long white hallways empty. My flashlight beam cut through the shadows, bouncing off metal equipment pushed against the walls. At 1 a.m., I made my second patrol. As I passed the laundry storage, I thought I heard something faint, like wheels rolling on tile. I froze. The hallway ahead was empty. I told myself it was just the building settling. Hospitals always make noises. Pipes groaning, vents rattling. Still, my chest tightened as I moved forward. When I reached the end of the corridor, I noticed one of the gurneys. Earlier, it had been against the wall. Now it was in the middle of the hallway, facing me. I shined my flashlight directly at it. The gurney didn't move. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd remembered wrong. But the squeak of wheels still echoed faintly in my ears, and I knew I hadn't imagined it. I pushed it back against the wall and continued. By the time I returned to my booth upstairs, my hands were clammy. I tried to calm myself by checking the monitors. Nothing unusual. At 2:50 a.m., it was time for my third round. I almost didn't want to go. My gut told me something was waiting, but orders were orders. The basement was colder this time. My breath fogged faintly as I walked past the morgue door. The sign was rusted, and the handle was taped over to keep it shut. Nobody had been in there for years. Halfway down the hall, I froze again. The gurney I had pushed back earlier was in the center of the hallway again. Only this time it was turned toward the morgue door. My throat went dry. I raised my flashlight, and as the beam settled on the gurney, it began to move. Slowly, as if someone unseen was pushing it forward. I stumbled back, nearly dropping my light. "Hello," I called out, voice shaking. No answer. The gurney rolled to a stop right in front of the morgue door. Then silence. I backed away and turned to leave. That's when I saw him. Another guard, standing at the end of the hall. He was supposed to be upstairs, covering the lobby. Relieved, I walked quickly toward him. "Jesus, man, you scared the hell out of me. Did you see that?" He didn't respond. He just stood there, staring past me at the morgue door. His face was pale, expression blank. "Hey!" I said louder, stepping closer. "Are you okay?" Before I reached him, the lights above flickered. When they came back on, the guard was gone. The hallway stretched out empty before me. My stomach dropped. I sprinted back upstairs, heart hammering in my chest. In the booth, I pulled up the basement cameras. The footage showed me walking alone down the hall. No guard. No moving gurney. Nothing. But as I rewound the footage again, I saw something in the corner of the frame. For less than a second, the camera caught a figure in a hospital gown crawling along the ceiling. Its limbs were twisted, its head bent backward at an impossible angle. I slammed the monitor off and sat back, shaking. There was no way to explain it. At 6 a.m., when my shift finally ended, I walked out of that hospital and swore I'd never go back. And I didn't. But even now, years later, when I visit hospitals for checkups or to see relatives, I never look up at the ceiling. Because I'm afraid of what I might see.